We've been friends since the '90s when I, just was like, who's this guy who's taking all these companies public and doing all this cool stuff in the internet? And then he continued to go and do all this cool stuff in the other categories, and then most recently blockchain and AI. Eric, give a little background intro for those who don't already know and love you.
Sure, thanks. So yeah, it's been since the '90s. Started back when the CD-ROM craze was the big excitement, and so coming when the web hit the internet, took my first company public then, and since then have built 16 companies with various levels of liquidity and outcomes that were successful. And now looking at the convergence of AI and blockchain and going across companies. And I'm very proud to say that for the first time in 35 years, I'm not CEO of anything. So, and I never will be.
Brock Pierce, our mutual friend, said many years ago, I saw him at a conference, and he had a little badge that said chairman. I said, chairman of what? He said, chairman of everything.
Exactly.
Own everything, run nothing.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun. So we're nurturing and building these companies from Vatum to next generation. TikTok meets tokenization, gold-backed stablecoin, which I'll talk to you about today, which I think is really going to be important for where the economy is going, and a whole set of concepts which really are based on the kind of macro theory of what the world's going to look like when this exponential set of technologies converge.
So we're here talking a lot about AI, all the tokenizes, and also a little sub theme because we're in Los Angeles of entertainment. With your various companies right now, how does what you're doing with Vatum and other companies affect what's happening with the disruption of the entertainment industry?
Well, it's actually a very important moment for the entertainment industry, both from the means of production, how AI is going to dramatically lower the cost and democratize access to the tools to create content, all the way to how that content is funded. So, from my view, one of the more exciting things one can do in any field are things that you just couldn't do before. So, it's nice when you can say, oh, I'm ready to do something, but it's also nice when that converges with there was no way to do it. So if you look at the success of the Y Combinator model, the reason why it became successful is they figured out how to create bets for very low cost at scale and to create a machine where talent could rise to the top. And with structured from experienced assistants, they could guide it through to some remarkable success. That was really not possible in the entertainment industry. It was just too expensive to get through the various stages. The time is right now. A number of things are converging around the technology, the means of distribution, the means of production, and a little known fact that, as with many things in the crypto industry, where regulatory environments are getting more friendly, in the entertainment industry, the same thing is happening. So there's a law called 181, which allows you to take absolutely incredible tax breaks for investing in production. So what we're doing is we're combining that with the tokenization of the choices of what one might build, so like the Y Combinator style, like called a DAO of Y Combinator, and then with the Soras and the nano bananas of the next generation that allow people all over the world to do things you couldn't do before at dramatically lower cost. And if you combine these things together, you end up essentially with a tokenized Y Combinator for entertainment.
Fantastic. And of course, we've got a number of speakers who also have takes on that today. We have a keynote by Robert Tersek, who just raised $16 million to do an AI studio, and a few other speakers that are doing some fascinating things that are very disruptive. So now moving to AI, because that's driving the economy right now. I think 40% of the profits of the S&P last year, or something I've seen one said as high as 80, were based on AI and fears of an AI bubble when all of a sudden the valuations perhaps collapse and turn the world into the next great recession, depression, bubble pop. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what the disruption is doing in terms of innovation. I mean, I remember in the early days of the internet, as do you, it seemed like things were just moving so fast after, the era of like client server and, when you have like, product updates twice a year. And that was considered to be like the progress of the industry. And then the web comes in and, all of a sudden, like every month, something hugely disruptive. Like I remember 1995, all of a sudden you've got real audio, then you got real video, then you got like, and it just seemed like every couple of weeks there was something that was hugely disruptive to the entire internet economy. I'd say in crypto, it's every couple of days or a couple of weeks, and in AI, it's every couple of days.
Right.
And so I find it interesting that I've been on, panels, or I've been to panels as well, where you have centralized AI companies, which are right now the dominant players by far. I mean, if you add up the market cap of all decentralized AI, it's fractions of 1% compared to the, open AIs and the, Google, Facebook, et cetera, Meta. And they kind of laugh at this centralization. They're like, yeah, that's a toy. Maybe someday in 100 years there'll be something there. But like right now, we're the real deal. They're the toy. They don't really have any tech. We're the tech. And yet, the at least dream of decentralized AI is you kind of want to own your own data. I mean, Venice has done that very well. Venice AI, Eric Voorhees, LLM. And if you're having in the next couple of years your agents going and doing everything for you in terms of finding products to buy and then doing the negotiation and the purchasing, do you really want to have that come through PayPal, or would you rather do it through stablecoins, which then gives you an on-ramp to the decentralized or at least the tokenized blockchain economy?
Yeah. Well, even PayPal has declared they're going to do it through stablecoins, so that's coming.
Although did they mint a couple of billion beyond what they were supposed to? I mean, it was
Yeah, well, that's one. There's a nice advertisement for Bitcoin. You can't accidentally mint another 21 million Bitcoins. So that was quite the screw up. They unwound that, but it was like a wake up call to like humans in the loop. But it was interesting that you mentioned like real video and all of this back in the day. Those of you who might remember that stuff. There was a time when we would show around three frames per second postage stamp video, and people would say, "That's ridiculous. Why would anyone want that?" It's like you're not seeing the exponential curve, and it's the same thing that's happening now with AI. Although the rate of change is changing, so it's happening even faster. So you mentioned this daily breakneck speed. That's what's going on, and society's just not ready for it. The changes that are going to occur across sectors are so dramatic that we have to really think about what does the world look like on the other side of it. And that's true with opportunities for innovation, but it's also true with the need for regulation, cultural preservation, all sorts of things that are going to happen at breakneck speed. So some of the projects that we're doing play into that. So on the innovation side, you might have heard of a guy named Imad Mostak. He's the former CEO of Stability. He just started a new company called Intelligent Internet. What's very interesting about that is it's the decentralized version of, call it OpenAI, open source and decentralized. But it plays on a Bitcoin-like model. Bitcoin proof of work, intelligent internet proof of benefit.
So kind of what Venice is doing, but they have the Venice token, the VVV token. This is actually built on Bitcoin or using Bitcoin?
No, but it's a I don't know if it's a fork but it's a similar principle, but it's not based on a proof of work. And so,
Is it more similar to Tau? I mean, Tau
yeah,
basically is using the Bitcoin principles, and it's going to be, whatever, 21 or 42 million coins over the next 16 years.
yeah,
And but instead of using proof of work, it's proof of inference.
exactly. So those of you who are not familiar with BitTensor, you should be. It's quite interesting, more than quite interesting. It's a gem. But if you look at this other thing, it's fledgling. And so what we're doing is, I think that it makes sense that when you're solving a hard problem in order to secure the network, should that energy be dissipated or can it go to some collective benefit? In this case, the idea is to marshal that towards the collective benefit. Everyone should have free access to the cancer model. Everyone should, it's like the AI of the future is almost like air and water. It's a natural right to have, and it shouldn't be aggregated in the hands of powerful central authorities. So to be able to distribute that, decentralize it, and pay for that with a common good goal is
And I don't
for.
think that's something that the government will mandate, although maybe in Europe you never know. But I think in general, when you end up having, I mean, it's the power of open source, really going back to Linux and before, when you have something that is centrally controlled, that establishes the market, but then when you offer an open source alternative that and in this case, have ownership of your own data, ownership of your own, you know, assets, intelligent people will start migrating to it, particularly if there's no cost of entry. I mean, obviously, you can get no cost of entry for the freemium models of the centralized systems, but they do. It comes with the cost of them owning your data and repurposing it for other things. And I know there's been controversies that even Sam Altman's talking about where if you're using an AI psychiatrist, all of a sudden all your problems are part of that database.
Yeah, exactly. So privacy is an absolutely critical factor for this, but at the same time, so is compute and power. So because it's so expensive now, it's coming down, but not. So is demand is going up. So Saudi, for instance, is spending $100 billion on a data center with the new NVIDIA chips called Humane. So you'll see an announcement which we'll make at the end of this month of how that might be made as into a gift for the world to actually leverage that by keeping data and privacy sovereign within the countries that would leverage it, but the compute would become available. This is very important, and then of course inference can be distributed. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is in order to govern at the speed of AI, you need AI. How do you know what laws to make across transportation, education, and government, and all the rest? You don't. And the time it takes to make laws, everything's obsolete. So you need a dynamic AI-driven law system that can also simulate the laws in society to show you how those laws would have effect in your particular culture. So that's something that will be
Well, and of
announced.
course, the reality is that just like the internet, just like search, and you'll have a global internet, but you'll have there's a law in France that you get punished if you have anything Nazi on your site, and over here you're gonna need to have the right to forget, et cetera, et cetera. And so I imagine that you're gonna end up having global AI, but restrictions like you have with blockchain. I mean, for so many years we've been used to here's the rules for the rest of the world, and here's the restrictive rules for the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. And and to your point of local cultures needing local capabilities, every local culture, unless it wants to be homogenized and wiped out, is going to need a local model. How do you train a local model when most of that data is not on the internet, it's in people's heads? You have to get it out of their heads, and that's the perfect for a tokenized model. So you can actually have a token-based model that compensates people on their willingness to train the system before they die, their bedtime stories, their recipes, the things that they grew up with. And that's going to be important, or else the whole thing gets whitewashed and becomes a sitcom version of itself.
What is the biggest thing you're working on within this overall incubator that'll be, oh my God, in 5 years?
Well, I'm hoping I can say 1 year, but 5 years as well. So I think we all agree. I certainly agree with your thesis in your book on how Bitcoin's going to go. And if you look at Fred Krueger and Ben Sigmund's new book, they have an excellent explanation of the Bitcoin power law and just its almost 97% adherence to it. I happen to believe that it's going to continue for some time. So we can look ahead to Bitcoin at 1 million and Bitcoin at maybe even 10 million, before it starts to become less volatile and a kind of a store of value of a more
But with
solid rate.
inflation, et cetera, and the fact that even gold inflates, 1.5% a year versus Bitcoin has 5% inflation over the next 100 years.
Exactly.
Basically, I was on a panel in Hong Kong where basically they were saying, where are we going to be at 100 years for different types of investments? And gold will be, more than double the overall market cap. And if inflation keeps up at like 3-4%, and who knows if hyperinflation takes hold at some point, it's I was projecting that in 21, 25 we'd be looking at 50 to $100 million Bitcoin because it might cost you $1 million to buy a car.
Well, it certainly wouldn't shock me. But you don't have to look that far out to know what we should be doing in the next 5 years. To your point, so my belief is that the world is now waking up to a very unique period. It's not just a pattern. This is a unique moment where nobody believes anymore that we're even going to try to balance the budget. This money printing machine, no, it doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat, they used to say, oh, elect me, we're going to do something about it. No one even thinks they're going to try. Everybody's starting to wake up to the idea that the only way out of the debt crisis is to print even more money. And the only way out of this is to devalue the dollar. And so it's not 99%, 100% we know that the dollar is going to devalue. Now, against what? Against all the goods in the supermarket, et cetera, but
Against gold, this has been obvious
gold.
this year, against silver, which also reached an all-time high, and against Bitcoin.
Correct. So the only really safe assets where people are going to start to flood towards is going to be gold, silver, the brand names that people can understand. There's other things. There's platinum. There's, certain lucky real estate buys, but it's basically gold, to some degree silver, and Bitcoin. Now, people don't understand Bitcoin that well. Generally, they will. It's catching on, but people don't. Those of us in the community think like everyone understands it but they don't.
Only 4% of the world has any Bitcoin, including abstracted.
Which is insane, right? And so you can see the growth. Now, if you think about what's going to happen and goes to the project that I'm working on, the gateway drug to everyone having a little Bitcoin has started with the Genius Act. The Genius Act said you can print money for the first time. Now, why would you want to print money? Well, at first, it was our friends William Quigley, Brock Pierce, and Craig Sellers, and Reeve Collins. They were working on something that would let the traders move it around without having to go in and out of banks.
The original business case for Tether, which is now the most profitable company in the history.
Yeah. But while that was the initial use case, the actual use cases evolving are fundamentally reorganization of the global economy. You can now settle instantaneously. You can do international remittance for nothing, blah, blah, blah. So as this starts to take hold.
And you can export the U.S. dollar around the world, which Trump recognizes, whereas the Biden administration was like, oh, this is horrible. You're competing against the dollar. No, you're extending the dollar so that everybody's saving U.S. dollars, and despite any kind of capital controls in your country.
Exactly. So every country is going to be undermined in their capital control opportunity. A lot of them will actually go the way of North Korea, shut off the internet. But some are going to just have to deal with it and manage this because people want an inflationary resistant way to save. Now, the next thing they're going to realize with that first gateway drug is that if you have an inflationary resistant way to save, sure, the dollar might be better than the peso, et cetera, but the dollar's not better than the old dollar. The dollar itself is getting destroyed. So that's going to be the gateway drug to tokenized gold, because gold has the 5,000-year-old brand name. Now, the problem with gold is obviously as a rock, it's very hard to move around. It's easy to steal, and it's very cumbersome, et cetera, et cetera.
So don't we have tokenized gold already with Paxos, USDG?
We do. The idea of tokenized gold is just starting. It's very early, and it's not being done properly for mass adoption from our view. The first thing that things like Tether Gold and Paxos are recognizing, but is not widely known, is that the existing forms of electronic gold, like you buy your gold ETF or you buy it through Schwab, it's 8-to-1 over hypothecated. It's not actually gold, or 13-to-1 if it's LBMA. So you've got this massive fake gold moving around that's just hoping there's no run on the bank.
So isn't unless they've changed, isn't USDG sort of backed by gold in a vault in New York?
Exactly. So now this is where we come in with tokenized gold. In order to make gold tokenized and move freely like a normal stablecoin, you have to have it trusted in a vault, continuously audited, and most importantly, redeemable. If you can't redeem it, then you can't prove it. So the next generation of this will put many, many, many more billions. The entire world of tokenized gold is $3 billion. It makes no sense, right? It's going to be 30 billion in no time and 300 billion beyond that. And then, it'll catch up to how people use gold. So what's needed is billions of dollars of gold in a form that you can redeem at very small increments. So you can feel like I can always get my gold.
So your differentiation from Tether Gold and Paxos Gold would be that you can actually redeem it for gold?
Not only redeem it for gold, but the level of trust and auditing so that you know that it's really there is next generation. So the first generations of Tether Gold, you need like $100,000 or $200,000, whatever it is, to redeem. Paxos also makes sense, but it starts to become a derivative instrument because you don't really have that view all the way back into the vault. What's needed is a flight to safety at the time that everyone's eyes are going to open and realize that the dollar is no longer.
Well, I believe that
Sitting.
they're audited by the New York Department of Finance, New York State Department of Finance, which is about as badass of a regular as you can get. But where you're going, I suppose, is if you need to get your gold out in Singapore, you can't do that, right?
Exactly. So you have to also place the gold around the world in different vaults. And the last thing is people are going to start to recognize that they want to get it in a regulated form in different ways. Like when Costco sells gold, they sell out instantly. If Costco was selling tokenized gold with a nice little package like made by Apple Computer, everybody would be buying some tokenized gold. What's really interesting though is the banks is another one of our initiatives. Banks are now going to start to evolve to have tokens and fiat on the same compliant balance sheets. So now when you're holding your US dollars, you're like, well, why don't I move it into a stable coin where I'm getting better yield? Why don't I move that stable coin into gold where it's automatically better yield than the dollar? And then what about yield on gold? Yield on gold is the next thing that I wanted to mention is we're going to be paying Bitcoin as yield on gold. So what we believe is that in the next 5 years, the most prominent way to save money will be gold-backed tokens with Bitcoin yield, which will switch ultimately to Bitcoin with gold yield. And that's the future once people
How does that work? Because obviously neither gold nor Bitcoin have native yield.
Yeah. So what you have to do is you have various levels of risk that you're willing to take, all the way down to almost no risk with massive over collateralization, borrowing, and then buying treasuries. So that's where you get very little yield. Once you have tokenized gold, though, that's composable and is usable within DeFi, gold is other than Bitcoin, is the world's best collateral asset. There's massive, infinite demand. For the first time in history, central banks have more gold than U.S. treasuries. It just passed.
One could argue that gold is better than Bitcoin as collateral because historically it's been less, volatile, and particularly on the downside.
Exactly. And psychologically, for a savings mechanic, until Bitcoin ultimate volatility settles down, which it will, but until
And it's been less this cycle than the prior cycles as well.
so over time people will get that comfort. But for the immediate years, gold is a more satisfying psychological comfort as the base savings mechanic. So if you have that and then you have it as collateral, you can borrow against it. You can also lend against it. And then for the first time, it'll be available for Aave like DeFi mechanics. So then you can start to get 6, 8, 20, depending on your level of risk type yield.
Is anybody else doing that yet with gold? Because I know Stable STBL, which I'm sort of a small advisor to the project, and I wish now that I'd put something into their seed round because it was about a 50x return when they went out. They went out about $4 billion. They were raising it like I think 30 million or something just this past February, and they basically their yield on stablecoins. And they mint it.
So their innovation is to separate yield from the token itself, yield in the form of an NFT, and then of course a governance token, was what you're referring to, has gone up and down in this cycle. I think that's a wise structure, makes sense. But
again, Reeve, co-founder of Tether, is also on the founding team there.
Yeah, exactly. So what you'll find though is that thesis is the macro trend, and it's what we're playing into as well. Everything that can be tokenized will be. Then the question is, how do you create token-backed assets that ultimately become yield-bearing? That'll be real estate, it'll be stocks, it'll be bonds, it'll be movies, as we talk about in the entertainment industry. It'll be whatever people want to bet on, including bets themselves. So one thing that people don't realize, even the prediction markets, which now
have been going crazy. I mean, that was something that, under Biden, they wouldn't let in the United States, and now all of a sudden they're just gigantic, and you just sold, what, a $2 billion investment?
This is absolutely game-changing because people like me who aren't professional traders have always thought of Wall Street as nothing more than a big casino. You've got one guy, Warren Buffett, who looks at the underlying, value, and everyone else is just gambling on it, what everyone else is going to do. I think prediction markets is the most honest form of like Wall Street, bets. So what's happening with prediction markets is they're being legalized in the United States, which I'm amazed at. You can go and bet on the Yankees. Like, why is that not gambling? Don't get me
Well, you
started.
can bet on so many other things. I mean, my good friend Vinny Lingham, who's been a speaker at past CoinAgendas, I was having breakfast with him in Austin, his beautiful new home he has there, and he was telling me about he's a semi-pro poker player too, right? I mean, did very well at the WSOP. He is just addicted to these prediction markets, and he was sitting. He said, "Yeah, I just track them, and I see when there's something that just seems like it's off kilter what it should be." So what he'd been betting on was the percentage, of rates at the Fed, right?
Right.
And so at one point there was only, I think, a 12% chance that the rate hike for, I think it was September, was going to be zero. And he's like, I'll put 50 grand on that. And, we literally, I had breakfast with him when they announced the increase. And at that point, it had gone up to about 90%. He's like, come on, come on. All right, I just made 40 grand,
Yeah, it's amazing. And I'll give you one insight into an innovation that you'll see coming from us early next year. So the prediction markets, now that they're being legalized, and it's clearly
And I'm getting the hook from Miss Joyce here, but
I'll give you the
finish your thought.
the last thought here is that the prediction markets themselves will be tokenized by us and eventually everyone, I think.
Awesome.
But not as a UI, but as the individual bets. Before Solana, you couldn't do this. You can tokenize this, put it in an object.
Kind of like X stocks.
Yeah, but that object now trades independently, and you might make a 5-year bet ahead on the World Series. As that gets closer to happening, the odds are different. The liquidity might not be there, but it's in the object. So now the value of that bet's going to go up and down as an independently traded.
Will this be a different company in your incubator?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. The new Y Combinator of crypto and AI. Give it up for Eric Pulier.
Thanks, Michael.